is. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Do-do-do-do-do-do. All right, what am I going to talk about today? This gentleman, blessed Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, or Manuel Cecilio Rodriguez Santiago, or Carlos Rodriguez Santiago. A picture of him. He was born in 1918 and he died in 1963. 1918, and this is 63. He's when he died. He was born in Puerto Rico. So just a year after citizenship was allotted to anyone born in Puerto Rico. So technically he was born as an American citizen because he was born in Puerto Rico. And he's the first Caribbean-born person have been beatified, declared blessed. So he's close to becoming a saint. Who knows when that will happen? But he's had at least one miracle that verifies something about his holiness, I guess, in the eyes of the church. So what was he? He was just a normal guy. He worked as an office clerk, a regular Catholic, I guess you could say. Catholic believer, worked in an office. At some time he wanted, I put it in the question on the quiz, but, oh, I forgot to mention that. Ooh, all right, yeah, remember we have a quiz tomorrow. Don't forget. It's in the syllabus, but I just wanted to remind you. Quiz tomorrow night, and then you'll have a week to take it. And a question about him might show up. Who knows how Canvas shuffles the questions. So there might be a question about Blessed Carlos on there. So anyways, I think he wanted to be a priest. I think that's in my question about him. He wanted to be a priest, but he wasn't healthy enough. He had health problems that they didn't think I guess he'd survive through the stresses of the seminary. All right, but he was a dedicated Catholic, and in addition to his regular job, he liked to teach on the liturgy, on church worship. He was very involved in that, doing translations into Spanish and stuff like that, because at the time the church worship was in a dead language, Latin. It's ancient language of Latin, which had pros and cons. I mean, on the one hand, you could go anywhere in the Catholic world and you could participate because it was all the same language. It didn't matter if you were in Japan and didn't speak Japanese, you could still go to Catholic Mass and it would be all in Latin. The con was, you understood a lot of things, but you didn't understand everything. Once it started getting complicated, like the priest started saying the prayers and stuff like that, or the readings or something. And yes, they did do the readings in Latin too. It's like, okay, Padre, Dominus Vobiscum I can understand, but all this other stuff, Sequentia Evangelii Secundum Marco. Okay, you lost me after Sequentia, parson. Anyways, so he would translate things into Spanish so people could at least understand what was going on and what they were doing. And he encouraged a lot of participation, which was not necessarily advocated or was high on anyone's list. People went to church, and the priest kind of did his thing up on the altar, doing the worship of the people, and the people would say their prayers as they kind of watched or read from their prayer books and stuff like that. So it was just common. It's just, nothing necessarily wrong with it, but it wasn't maybe as active as people could have been paying attention to what was going on. That's why we need the language in English. We need the Mass in English, Mr. Lebedinsky, right? Yeah, right. Things have gotten so much, but it might as well be in Latin. It might as well be in like Klingon. Who knows? No one's listening. Why shouldn't it say no one's listening? I don't know what's in somebody's heart. They might be listening, but when it's like, I'm not so sure. Or when the phones are out, people are on their phones during the Mass. Are they listening? Well, I don't know. People can do two tasks at once, I guess. So he did promote the renewal of the liturgy by trying to get people more involved and paying attention. Unfortunately, during an operation, they found cancer, which took his life. Rectal cancer, not a very kind form of cancer. Not that any form of cancer is good, but could have been some other area, Lord. He was a saint, maybe, toenail cancer, maybe. No, he gets it right in the rectum. So anyway, so that's what killed him, and he died rather young. He died at 44. Nevertheless, a holy man of God, blessed Charlie, I ask for your prayers for us in this class, those of us who are still somewhat present, both physically and mentally in the course. No, pray for us all, blessed Charlie. For me as well, I'll teach a good course. Amen. I was talking about the sacred, yes, and holy. Well, holiness. Talking about holiness. We're setting him apart, right? He's now a blessed. He's not just Carlos, regular old Carlos. He's been declared a blessed. So there's something special about him. Yes, we've set him aside. Ultimate the sacred. I did that. Holy. I did that. I did that. Oh, okay, mystery. All right, we'll get to mystery in a second. Ooh, you got a bag of something there? Is that chips, Miss Snyder, or popcorn, or? Oh, it's your bag. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have my eyeglasses on. I thought it was like a bag of chips or something. And I heard that. So, oh, okay. My mind put the ideas together. Sorry about that. I already said that. So where am I going here? Hold on. I just don't want to repeat. I don't want to repeat what I might have said already. Okay, holiness. Let me go back to holiness because that's where I marked. So I'm going to assume. Oh no, because I remember we read this, right? No, we did not. Nope. We read this other thing. Uh-oh. No, but this makes sense to me. The sacred denotes a class of objects. Didn't we read from this? Oh well, we'll read it again. I apologize if we're doing it again. It's my mistake, but I'll just go with my mark. Sanctity or holiness, being dedicated to a supernatural being, okay, is sacred. Whole, another word for the sacred is holy, which is a quality maybe of someone's character, of something that's set, again, this idea of being set apart for honor or devotion. It does something that's holy, or a person that's holy deserves respect and might receive commitment, respect and commitment, or honor and devotion. As I told you, in Proto-Indo-European, it has a sense of wholeness or health, safety, yes. It also has the idea, did I put this on the PowerPoint? Yeah, I did, of being uninjured, without injury. We see how basic the idea is here. It becomes the concept of holiness and stuff like that. But really, it's very basic, not having injuries, not having any wounds, or having broken bones or scabs is really what holiness is. And then we transfer it to like a more spiritual, conceptual idea of like, inside stuff, how a person acts or reacts to the world. They're uninjured, like they don't do bad things, they don't harm other things, other people. They don't have like sin, like the scab on the soul is sin, or a blemish on the soul is like sin. It's like a bruise, you might say. Sometimes people use that language to describe it. And a lot of times in religious language, they'll use the language of healing to talk about, like if you go to confession and you're Catholic, you're healed through the grace of the sacrament of confession. God takes away your sins. So again, that idea of health and holiness. Okay. Something that's honorable or that have devotion to. At its most basic level, the sacred or the holy, as we keep coming back to. I mentioned this with Durkheim when we did his definition. It's not a bad definition. It's things that are set apart. anything that's set apart for use, specifically in regards to some, what we might say, supernatural entity, a spirit, a god, for a specific religious purpose. Okay? This is only to be used, like, for example, if any of you, I don't know if anyone's Jewish or whatever, but when you have like Passover and stuff, that's a better example. Hope that Passover example is a good thing. Yeah, the Passover cup, which is only used to pour wine into. You have special silverware for Passover and a cup that you pour the wine into for the Passover meal. And that's all you use it for. Okay? But it's just a regular cup. It looks like maybe a wine glass or something. But it's not regular. And then with things that are sacred or holy, you make them not regular because, look at how people treat them. Like the cup might be gilded, have little gold on it and might have imagery on it and words, that you don't typically find. And if you go to Walmart, they might have, people paint flowers on the sides of the coffee cups or something like that. But, this gets elaborate because it's special. It's sacred. Its purpose is special. And it's separate. You keep all the stuff for Passover packed away for the time. You're not using it every day, or it's not just there, or, you want to have a glass of milk. Well, we don't have any clean glasses. Well, get the Passover cup. Just use that. No, don't do that in an Orthodox household. Because it's separate. It's separated, set apart. It's set aside is another way to put it. Yes. And the holy is a symbol of what's ultimately real. Okay, remember the sacred is kind of a perception. It's not religion itself. Religion is how we interact with the sacred, how we are able to treat it properly. The sacred is an idea that's symbolizing what's ultimately real and meaningful. It's not necessarily the cup, for example, that you use at the Passover to pray blessings from God, or blessings from God, the cup of blessing. There are like 5 cups of wine, each with its own blessing. Blessed are you, O Lord, King of the universe, or eternal King. You have given us the fruit of the vine, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a longer prayer that I don't know the rest of. Anyways, but the cup isn't God himself. All right. It is sacred. It's set apart for God, for the use of God and his worship, but it's not the God itself. So it's a symbol of the ultimately real and meaningful. It communicates things, and that's what rituals do. One of the readings, was Robinson and Rodriguez. I was looking at this the other day when I was composing the quiz, Ms. Senior. Did you drawing pictures? Oh, cool. I just don't want to get my classes mixed up because I don't think I gave the reading in the other class. Yeah, I used it. No, because we talk about what is religion. Oh, maybe I don't think I gave it in this class. But anyways, rituals are part of religion. Some religions have more rituals than others. I was talking about the Catholic Mass before and how it was in Latin. That was a ritualistic thing. It was considered a sacred language. It wasn't like they were trying to keep things from people, hide stuff, hide meanings, but the language was important because that's what the church, that was the ancient language of Rome. But no one spoke it anymore. And so it became special. It became a kind of a feature to distinguish Catholic worship from just, or Catholic prayer from just any kind of other worship. It gives you a special knowledge. It's like code language, when you're in your special club, or you're talking with your friends and you've got your own little code words and stuff that you know in your group, but others don't know. And rituals as well. Doing things, the way the Mass was celebrated back 50 years ago, was much more ritualized, much more complex than it is today. Now it's kind of like priest kind of stumbles out. It's the book. Oh, yeah, give me the one. And Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and the Lord be with you. Grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and love of God, and fellowship of the Holy Spirit. How you doing today? Did the Phillies win last night? I don't. It's not, but in the old days, it was like, the priest had to have his hands, in a certain way and never looked up at the people. He was always to have custody of the eyes and look down and every action is supposed to be very deliberate. Mm. But, well, because I'm an Easterner. That's how I think. The Bible says, "Be something beyond them. In true immortal glory, they bubble." Yeah, he was speaking in a subdued manner. He wasn't. There were some things the priest would say out loud, but most of it was him praying to God. But there are all sorts of little rituals and things to show that the actions were set apart. They were special actions. They were symbolizing a greater reality. Kind of in the 60s when the church kind of got modernized. I remember, well, I was born in 72, but close enough. You can hear people, they would just kind of like dismiss the old rituals and say, oh, you don't need to do that. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Oh, no, it does. Well, I don't know. It does sometimes. It doesn't mean anything ultimately. Like, do you think you're going to go to hell if you don't hold the candlestick in this certain way? Or, no, Father, I don't think I'm going to go to hell or something. But you're a bad person. No, but rituals are symbolic of this respect for the sacred. Where am I here? Trying to get off onto ritual. What you consider ultimately meaningful. In the case of the Catholic Mass, the God, but also making present the Last Supper of Jesus Christ when he changed bread and wine, so the belief goes, into his flesh and blood. Okay? And so you're showing that it's not a normal reality. You have to act differently in these circumstances. Even if the circumstances can change. There's still ritual in the Catholic Mass, but it's much, much, much less. But it kind of shows that what you're doing matters. Matters. It's like, if you're ever at a Catholic church, you can always tell when they're going to have like a baptism, a baby's going to be baptized, or there's going to be a wedding later on, maybe after the Mass sometimes. How do I know? How do you know? Plain on the nose is your face. How do you know? People dress up. All of a sudden, all these people show up in suits, and women in these beautiful, fancy dresses, and all this other stuff. They're all dressed up. So you just know that's not, is that a regular experience at a Sunday Mass? At least the churches I've gone to, the Catholic churches I've gone to, it's not. If you look at old pictures of when people went to church, oh yeah. I think some Protestants still have this, like Baptists and things. You have your Sunday clothes, your suit and dress and hat in certain traditions. All women always wear hats. Yeah, you couldn't just enter the church in any old way. It was special. And the ritual shows the specialness, that it's meaningful. So yeah, the baptism of a little baby is meaningful to people. It's their kid, or it's their nephew, or their grandson or granddaughter. So it's important. Or it's a marriage. My daughter's getting married, my son's getting married, my friend, whatever. So you dress up. But next Sunday, if you go to Mass, people show up, jeans and a t-shirt, maybe something like that, nothing dirty, clean, but certainly not all dressed up. Why don't you wear a suit every Sunday? You're going to see God and worship God. because you're showing what you think is special. Ritual does that. It shows what people think is special and not special. So in some ways, it does have meaning and importance. Maybe not ultimate. Rituals don't have ultimate meaning. They're not important maybe in the long run. They can change. Rituals change. But that's usually dangerous. That can be dangerous because the rituals are how you're relating to the sacred, you know? And that can shake people sometimes. People can have big fights over that. You know, like old believers in the Russian Orthodox Church. You know, the patriarch did a few relative, in my opinion, relatively minor reforms. I think it might have been in the 1700s, or it might have been the 1800s, certainly in that time period, in Russia, in the Russian Orthodox Church, Christian denomination. You know, we did stuff like, you know, changed a letter and how the name of Jesus was spelled, you know, and then they were using another dead language, Old Church Slavonic. I might have mentioned this before, but if I didn't, which is basically Old Bulgarian. So even the Eastern churches they were using their version of kind of Latin in a way, but it was it's one of the early Slavic languages, Old Church Slavonic. And I guess they were just making some revisions. I don't know, maybe Jesus' name got spelled wrong or something. I don't know. But just that, how many times they said the Alleluia, I think, before they read the holy book of the gospel, the stories of Jesus. Do we say it 3 times, once, whatever, something else? And making how to make the sign of the cross, and in the old days, you had 2 fingers out and the 3 fingers together, and you made the sign of the cross like this. But he changed it, so now the standard would be 3 fingers together and then 2 like this, and kind of reinterpreted the symbolism of it. Oh, no. These were too much for some people. Like, no, you don't change these rituals, because for them, they started interpreting it like it meant a change in belief. And that was serious. So you had a schism, you had a break-off called the Old Believers in the Russian Orthodox Church. They're still around today. And they were widely persecuted by the czars of Russia and the Russian Orthodox Church because they were considered like heretics because they wouldn't accept the change in ritual. But, even some Roman Catholics have problem with that. They want to go back to Latin. They think that was a mistake, using that ritualized kind of language. That was a mistake. There was a higher value in using the ritual that was being enunciated, you know what I'm saying? Shown forth. And by losing that, you're showing something else. Or by maybe removing some of the rituals, you're showing a change in doctrine. Maybe you're not as devoted to, I don't know, the presence of Christ in the Eucharist or something. If you don't, by how many times the priest would genuflect. Priests used to genuflect in worship more times in the old liturgy, the old worship services. Now they only do it a couple times. But even a couple's not enough, Some people want like the 4 or 5 times that the priest used to do it. Why 4 versus 2 or 5 versus 2? It's that, whatever, I mean, I'm not trying to belittle the arguments, but I'm just saying they're numbers, okay, but it matters. The ritual was changed, and people wonder, does that mean the church is showing less faith that the bread and wine have turned into the body, blood of Christ? Well, if you want to know, go look on the internet. You'll find all these debates going on. Anyway, so I think ritual is important. I don't think it can just be so quickly dismissed. And changing ritual can be quite dangerous for a community, for any community. Anyways. The sacred. Peter Metcalf, in his Dictionary of Anthropology. I remember mentioning the Dictionary of Anthropology, but you know what? I might have read it in another class, not in this class. But anyways, and so it's bleeding over. The classes are kind of bleeding over in my mind. Not literally, don't call security or the health of, well, I'm doing okay. All right. Would you like to read, Ms. Diaversa? No, Ms. Diaversa. It's like that, Ms. Diaversa. Really? It's only September yet. You still have 2 more months to hate me. Good. Who would like to read from the Dictionary of Anthropology? Da-da-da-da-dee. La-da-da-da. Miss Cobb?
No, thank you.
Wait, you've done readings before, haven't you? I've asked you. Yeah, okay. You never gave me your pizza. Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, I know.
Did you eat some of it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, now it's going to be cold. It's not going to. All right. I'm not happy to solve that. He's going to kill up. Is that? Yeah, just that. All right, great.
The speaker commits a place of objects, events, and deeds that poetry defines as different from those of ordinary reality. As an adjective, it refers to a quality of difference or being separate from, and we're holding them or being well. In many cases, implies a limit to an unseen and cheap natural leader of existence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. Short and sweet from an anthropologist. Okay. Objects, things, I mentioned things already. Events. Well, we know that certainly. I mean, they have the Halloween Baking Championship on the Food Network, and I was on the other night watching that. And why is it on now? I mean, well, because we have a special holiday coming into the universe at the end of October, Halloween, right? And all of a sudden, there's special shows on television that they don't show during other times of the year, necessarily, unless you're like the Hallmark Network, where they show it's Christmas all the time, every day, all day. But now they're showing Halloween shows, spooky shows, creepy shows. So you have events. When Christmas comes around, all of a sudden, people decide that they need to put all these blinky lights outside on their homes or in their windows. Because it's an event and it's sacred. They're setting it apart from the rest of the year. They're not, because of, you drive by, or I drive by someone's house, a month later, and the lights are still there. Maybe you pause a little bit, like, why are their lights still up? Why shouldn't their lights be up in February? Why not? What's not special about February? What's so special about December? But you have that sense, don't you? The event is over. The sacred time is gone. So why are you still ritualizing it? And sacred beings, priests, lamas, rabbis, people that, gurus, you treat them very differently. Maybe. It's a little bit weird, when father tries to act like he's your best buddy, It's just a little weird, When they usually you don't want the priest trying to run the youth group. Yeah. Well, because they're older guys and their tastes in music and movies are probably not yours. As you can tell with me, when I make references to stuff, I still think like, the 80s are recent, Or I make a reference to some movie from the 2000s, and I still have to stop and say, well, no, if they're 20 or 19, and we still weren't alive then, they might not know that movie. It's all right, it'll happen to you, Mr. Sheridan. It will. You'll have that when you start getting into your late 30s, early 30s. Yeah, so, I mean, it's just kind of weird, because he's a sacred person. What is he doing in a bar? Should he be in a bar? Why not? Priests need beer too, Miss Harrison. Don't they? Gotta keep them happy. Can't let priests on the loose. What are you eating, Mr. Barnett? Oh, you're having some? What are you eating, Tom? Huh?
Chocolate. Total.
Oh, okay. Very nice. You've got, vegetable straws. Vegetable straws. I know what you've got, sir. Oh. So yeah, used to be all sorts of rules for Catholic priests in the old days. Traditional, customary rules. They weren't necessarily like, hard and fast. But yeah, priests were not supposed to be seen in public houses like a bar. They weren't supposed to go there, or theater, go to watch plays or movies. Never entered a person's house without permission, especially if it were just a woman present. There always should be someone else there, with the priest and the woman, so there would be no scandal. The people wouldn't talk. Is he going in there? We're going to see her. Or might she change the gender these days? Different times, Miss Harrison. Times have changed. You have to look out for other things. What else couldn't priests do? Well, they also had to cut their hair a certain way. They had to leave top crown. It doesn't matter for me because I'm bald as a rule, but they had to keep the top crown of their head shaved about the size of a quarter. Okay, which was just a ritual from the Middle Ages and ancient times when clergy, they probably took this from paganism, there's nothing Christian about it, but you would shave your head to show that you were dedicated to the god. Everyone would know you were dedicated because the top of your head was shaved. And then you would have hair around the sides. So they didn't do the whole, monks did. Monks would still do that. If you went to a Catholic monastery, they would still do that. We don't do it today. But for the priests, the regular priests out with people, they just modified it. So just the size of a quarter. It has to be shaved from the top of your head. So if you were like at a beach or something and you saw some dude, you knew he was a priest. It's 1930s, and you're like, oh, he's a priest. And what's he doing at the beach with all these naked women, half naked women? What's he doing out here, Jim? So you can identify him, even if he did go into a bar. Anyone Catholic who knew would say, wait a second, you got the shaved crown of the head. What are you doing here, Father? Or deacon, could have been a deacon, or bishop. What are you doing here? Why? Because he's a sacred person. He shouldn't be in certain places that are profane, Mr. McKillop. Now, those all customary rules are out. I think they all just decided in the 60s, we're really not going to do this. Go out to the bars, go out with the people, go out to people's homes, make friends, get out of the rectories and know your people. How'd that work out in this car? Maybe somebody knew you needed to keep people on a leash. I don't know. Mystery. The sacred deals with mystery. It's mysterious. And it's scary. Just like any mystery. It's kind of attractive, might interest us, unless you don't like mysteries and stuff like that, then that's fine. That's not your thing. But, there might be things, let's say curiosity, maybe. You're attracted to it. You're interested, But maybe it also kind of scares you. You're curious, could there be in the future some asteroid that is actually going to impact planet Earth? Do we know of any that will impact the Earth? I think there is one in 500 years' time that is supposedly on a trajectory for us. And it's a planet killer. It was pretty big. But yeah, so that's kind of makes you curious. You're fascinated by it. You might look it up. But it also is kind of scary because if you find out it's true, like NASA does know that in 3 months' time, something's going to hit us and it's going to destroy everything. Why isn't this on the news? Why aren't they doing something about this? You worry about it. You make films about it on Hollywood. It's like a disaster film. It's both fascinating, but also kind of scary. And that's kind of like what the sacred is as well. The sacred attracts us, but it also kind of disturbs us. We want to have a relationship with the sacred, but it also kind of makes us afraid of it in some way. We want to control it. We want to use magic or something so that the sacred won't get out of control and hurt us. Yes. So again, it's like getting back to saying and being in a Catholic church or something. You got little kids running around the church or yelling or something like that, and the parents will say, "Stop yelling! Stop running!" Well, why? Well, running is just running, Talking loud is talking loud. Why do I have to whisper if I'm in a certain building? Or why do I have to walk and not run? Or walk fast? You can walk fast, but don't run, all right? You can speed walk. And it's God's house. In a special place, it's God's house. Okay. So they put the fear into you. Like, if you do this, what? Like, God's going to hurt you? God's going to punish you because you were disrespectful? And yet they want you to be in church all the time. Oh, come to church. Or you can see how people react when they sometimes go to a church, that they're attracted, they go, but as soon as they get into the church, it's almost like you almost implode in a way, or you bow your head and almost don't want to make a sound, like you're afraid of something, like something's going to happen. Like you're in a haunted house. Long lines outside the haunted house, Mr. Seraphin, so there's obviously attraction. But then when people get in there, maybe you hear people say, "I don't want to be here anymore." It scares them, right, Mr. Seraphin? Yes. 5% of your profits, Mr. Seraphin. So the sacred evokes a mixed reaction. On the one hand, we have an instinct to avoid it. We're afraid of it. Stay away. That's why you separate it. Okay? Show it respect. But we're also kind of attracted with it. We're also in awe of it. We're fascinated by it. What is that? Now, what is that? Don't get too close. Yeah, but what is that? It's dangerous. The sacred disrupts our order of reality. It's weird and unusual. And so treat it properly. Treat it properly, or you might get hurt. And this is where we get to say religious professionals. I mentioned priests before. Well, what was special about the priest? Why was he supposed to be treated? You don't even touch the priest. People will talk about, oh yeah, in the old days we put the priests up on a pedestal and Father could do nothing wrong. But nowadays it's kind of like the opposite. Father does everything wrong. But there was a reason for that, because he was the one who interacted with the sacred for us. He was taking the hit, possibly, if the sacred got disrespected. I'm not up there saying the prayers at the altar. He is, so he has to say them properly. If he doesn't, then the sacred has been disrespected and treated improperly, and there would be consequences, probably for him. So you want the religious professional, or as they're sometimes called, the charismatic personality. They have a charisma, they have a gift for dealing with the sacred. They're charismatic, or a religious professional. They're kind of like your buffer zone between you and the sacred. And they know how it's controlled, whereas you don't. They've been trained in how it's controlled. And you saw this in the old days, not so much today, but I still think they'd have the prayers. But if you look in the prayer, if you go into the chapel, they've got the Roman Missal on the altar, the book of prayers the priest uses. And somewhere in an appendix, I think they do have it now, but especially in the old days, there were prayers that the priest was supposed to pray after Mass, after he'd celebrated the Eucharist or Mass. And some of the prayers were, asking forgiveness for any mistakes that he had made in the celebration of the liturgy, where he might have possibly offended God, that God would not hold that against him or against the community. So it must be controlled, and ritual is part of that control of the sacred. The sacred is related to this idea of mystery. I'm not sure why I put this out here. I put mystery. Well, it's related to the idea of mysteriousness, something that is not known or understood, or cannot be known or understood fully. The Greek word, this is a Greek word, mysterion, but it comes from the verb mueo, to be initiated. So kind of like in some of the ancient religions, they didn't tell you what they believed or what they did until you were a member. They were secretive. They were mysteries. And scholars call them mystery religions because they were mysterious about what their ceremonies were and what their beliefs were, which makes it kind of difficult for historians now and archaeologists as well to kind of understand these religions, like the Eleusinian mysteries and stuff like that. Archaeologists have found temples of some of these mystery cults, as they're called, but they don't mean cult in a negative sense, just kind of a religious group. And we know what they are, but we don't know what any of the things were used for because we don't have any actual inside information from people who were members writing like this is what we do and this is why we do it, explaining all the symbols and the symbolism of their religious buildings, or at least we have very little information. So a lot of it has to be guesswork because they were attending to this mystery. If you were not an initiate, you were not told. Not going to tell you. Christianity was like that in its early days. Christians usually did not talk about what happened during the Mass to outsiders. So there were all sorts of theories about what the Christians did in their churches amongst the pagans. The mystery. Now, something is mysterious, but not in the sense that it's unknowable. We use that commonly today. Something's a mystery. Oh, God's a mystery. All right, so what's the point of even having God talk if God's a mystery? Because you can't know it. It's a mystery. Well, that's not true, because if you read a mystery book, they almost always tell you who the killer is at the end, right? I mean, people would be kind of pissed off if the last chapter were withheld with the solution to the mystery. And yet we call it a mystery book, even though the solution is knowable if you turn to the last chapter and read it, or the last couple chapters, and read what the solution is, or was. So a mystery doesn't necessarily mean that something is, God bless you, unknowable completely. It just means it's really not known. You can't have full knowledge of it. But it doesn't mean that no knowledge is possible. Okay, that it's so separate from me that I can know about it, but I can't know everything. It's secret. Okay, another way of describing it is it's secret. The word secret just means hidden or it's private. Okay, so for example, Mormon temples. Forget what. This is the temple in Philadelphia, here in Philadelphia, for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's where Latter-day Saints go to get married. They have eternal marriage. You're married forever. They do baptisms for the dead, for dead people, for people whenever they've died, And they do other sorts of things. We know what they do, but we don't know the ceremonies. Well, we do know the ceremonies because, of course, the internet. But even before the internet, you had ex-Mormons, ex-Latter-day Saints who would want to reveal the truth and would put out exposés describing what was going on in the temple. But if you ask them, the missionaries that come to your door, hello, I'm Elder Johnson from Utah, and this is Elder Smith from Alberta. We'd like to talk to you about another testament of Jesus Christ. Yeah, come on in. They're nice guys. Missionaries I've ever met are very nice guys. But yeah, if you ask them about the temple, they'll say, you know, it's no, it's not, it's sacred. It's not secret. You're like, why can't I go? Can anyone just go in the temple? No, only those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are permitted to enter the doors of the temple. Although when they build a new temple, they do have kind of like an open house and they let the public in. But then once it's officially dedicated, no, the doors are locked to anybody who doesn't belong. And they know you don't belong because they have what's called a temple recommend, which is a special card that you receive from your local ward bishop, who's like the parish priest, attesting to the fact that, yes, you are a member of the church and you are in good standing. So because, you know, if you're a sinner, you can't even, if you're a Mormon and you're a sinner, you can't go in. You have to be living the Mormon life. So they'll say it's sacred and not secret. And when I was younger and met some Mormon missionaries, I was kind of like, you know, come on, it's sacred, not secret. That's just kind of a slogan. But I've come around to their point of view. Yeah, it is sacred. It's mysterious to them. It's part of their, in some sense, every religion has some kind of mystery to it, things that some people are just not allowed to see. You know, I, as a Catholic, am not allowed to see how the Pope is elected. I know how he's elected. The cardinals get together and they take a vote, but I'm not allowed in the room to see it, and they're not going to put cameras in it to show it, because it's not a political event. It is a sacred event. You're electing a sacred personage, the Bishop of Rome. You know, the priest doesn't or shouldn't, I hope, have his phone on in the confessional. At least not when I'm there. Because then I did that when I was in Ireland once. I was an exchange student to Ireland for a year. And they were hearing confessions during Mass, actually, interestingly enough. And I decided, I had something to confess. So I went into the confession. The problem was that, you know, the confessional box was like right there, and everyone else in the church was like right here. You know, they could hear everything I was saying, you know? I mean, even if whispering, it wasn't really that enclosed. All they had was a big drape, big curtain. And of course, you could hear what the priest was saying to me. Well, Matthew, in the future, Matthew, faith and Bagara, you know? Don't look at those dirty books, Matthew. Try to stay away from that. Yes, thank you, Father. But you know what I thought? Okay, who cares? So people know I have certain sins that I struggle with. Big deal. But they're not supposed to know, you know? The priest shouldn't have his cell phone, you know, which could maybe record people and stuff like that, because it's a sacred thing, you know? I'm talking to God through him. He can't even talk about what I say to anybody else. So there's sacred things that, like the Catholic confessional, the Mecca, the whole city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia, you cannot enter it if you're not a Muslim, period. The whole city is haram. It is sacred, set off from the rest of the world. You have to be a believing Muslim man or woman to even enter the whole city, not just the religious part where you think they do their little religious rituals. No, the whole place is off limits. It's sacred. And so it's mysterious. We know what's going on. We know that they don't hide what rituals they perform, but I can't see them. I can't participate in them. So it is mysterious to me what happens. They're not filming them for people so they can see. Then no. They're sacred. They're holy. So, I mean, this reminds us, the sacred reminds us of, you know, we have an essential limitation. We can't know everything. We can't know everything. We have a limited number of cells in our brain. So even if we wanted to possibly know everything, physically it doesn't seem to be possible because, again, we have a limited number of cells in our brain. And we're not getting any more, apparently. You know? Our skull capacity is what it is. So it's not infinite. It's not infinite. So even if we could know a lot of stuff, you know, it's like any kind of computer. Eventually you start getting the little message on your computer that, you know, C drive is getting full. Please delete some files, you know? And maybe there are some things that we shouldn't know. So that's the temple. Don't worry about it. That's a man house in Papua New Guinea. Don't worry about that. I didn't mention it. There's the confessional. From the everyone see the Alfred Hitchcock film, I Confess? Alfred Hitchcock. Thriller. It's a thriller about a priest who's accused of a murder that he hears in confession. I confess. And there's Mecca. There's Mecca. Huge. I mean, look at these huge buildings, hotels and stuff for people to stay in. I mean, here's this small thing down here. This is the mosque where people go to walk around the Kaaba, walk around this little building there, that little building. But look at the big city around it, you know? All sacred. All Muslim. No Christian churches in Mecca. There's no local synagogue or, Unitarian Universalist community. No, they're all Muslims in Mecca. All right. So the profane, the word we use for profane, profanity, stuff like that. Well, it's non-sacred language. That's why it's profane. Although we use it more for cursing words or swear words or words that, kind of are offensive to people. But profanum simply means anything. Well, the definition is simply, which is I guess it's not a satisfying definition. It's just what's not sacred. Whatever is not sacred is profane. Okay, whatever. That's not saying very much. But, what literally it comes from is profanum. Okay, which means in front of something, and phanum is the name for a temple or a sanctuary. Say the church building. So, it's like what they say in the commercial, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, okay? Whatever happens in the church is sacred. Whatever happens outside the church is profane. If it happens outside the church, it's not sacred. It's profanum. It is everyday and common, ordinary. And you want to recognize that difference between the sacred and the profane. Whatever happens within the sacred precincts of the phanum, the temple, that's what happens there, and that's all that matters. Okay? But outside of that, a cup is just a cup. A person is just a person. And that's where our word fanatic comes from. That's why, for sports and stuff, people are, a fan, which is short for fanatic. It comes from this word phanum. Those people who go to church too much. Betty Miss Prawl, she's always in the chapel praying. Usually that's not a compliment. At least I've never heard it that much as a compliment. Unless we're saying, oh, Betty's such a saint. She's such a nice person. She's always praying. Oh, yeah. But usually it's like, oh, here comes Matthew. He's going to talk about Jesus, always Jesus. I remember I was teaching at one school. Oh, it doesn't matter. Seton Hall. I'm sure you've heard of Seton Hall University. And back then I used to open a class with a little prayer. I still do so. I don't know. But I did it back then. And I remember one of my students was walking in front of me to the class. She didn't know I was behind her. The whole way, we were walking across the whole campus. And she's like, she says to her friend, as we get closer to the building where the class is being held, she turns to her friend and says, well, see, I got to go to prayer class now. And I'm like, interesting. How can I use this, Mr. Barnett? Because she had no clue I was behind her. She's totally oblivious, So I played a little joke on her in class. As I was beginning the prayer, I acted like I was going to speak in tongues or something. I was going into a trance, And I said, oh, Miss So-and-so, I received a message from the Lord. He said, welcome to prayer class. And she just, look on her face. How did he know? I'm a bad man, Mr. McKillop. But I got to make my fun somewhere. So yeah, you're a fanatic. You're a Bible thumper. They're always in church. Yeah, go ahead. Not that loud, am I? I didn't think I was that loud. Anyways, you're a fanatic. You're in the temple all the time. So, the profane. Religion. What's my definition of religion? My definition of religion. This is just blowing my mind because I'm going over stuff that I've gone in another class. And it's like, I'm trying not to have brain bleed. All right, brain, keep that stuff over here and that stuff over there. Okay? Remember, my definition of religion, which I admit it's very verbose. Maybe it's not, the other definition I gave in the other class was more verbose than this. I kind of like this. What is it? It's the name for a concept. Okay, religion is a concept. Yes, I think I accept that. I'm not. I disagreed with religious studies scholars who say that there's no such thing as religion. No, I think there is a reality that we call religion. Okay, other cultures and peoples have different names for it, Tao, Dharma, whatever. But religion is the one that we've kind of decided to use in our Western culture. So it is a concept. So it's an abstraction. Yes, it's things, it's things that we're seeing, we're perceiving, yes. But I think we really are perceiving something or identifying something, that people are doing these rituals or reading these books and treating them in a special way and treating people in a special way because they're not normal. They're religious. So it is a concept for things that people believe about reality and practices that they do. Human beings, okay, other animals don't seem to do these things. All right. Yes, some chimpanzees can use tools. They can take a little stick and they can stick it. No pun intended, Miss Taylor. Stick it in the ground and so and get a whole bunch of ants on the stick and then eat the ants off. Okay, that's tool use. But I haven't seen any chimpanzees building cathedrals. I haven't seen any chimpanzees. Yes, we can dress chimpanzees up in little suits and hats and bring them to the circus and they can dance for us. Although maybe you're not supposed to do that anymore because maybe that's like abuse. So everything now is Cirque du Soleil. It's okay to have people being abused for your entertainment. Have them up there dancing in little suits. Don't do it to chimps, though. That crosses an ethical line. No, but anyways, yeah, you can do that to the monkey, but the monkey's not dressing up like, doesn't go home dress up like a bishop or something and make the sign of the cross and give blessings to people. So that the animals don't seem to have religion. At least they're not practicing, I guess. Maybe they're all atheists. I don't know. God bless. But religion seems to be a purely human phenomenon by which we recognize the sacred and we try to interact with it. We recognize that the sacred somehow intervenes into normal life. There are abnormal things that happen in normal space and time. And we want to interact with that. We want to, I guess, know more about it. Some people want its power to use it, like that's magic and stuff like that. And this sacred, the word we call this perception of power, of the unnatural or abnormal, people tend to equate it with an ultimate reality. It means everything for them. It's like with Dharma or the Tao. It's how just the universe works. It's how it is. It's ultimate reality. The Tao is simply it. It's inexplicable. You can't explain it. Why is the world like? It's just the way it works. You'll learn, your parents learned that when you started asking them questions, and when some of you have children, your kids start asking you questions of that range, why do people get sick and die? It's the way life is. You have no better answer. because it's ultimate. You see it as ultimate. We all die. And so all religion, I would say, is based on this experience of the sacred or the holy. It's just a history in various ways and various cultures. Are you leaving? Are you putting your? Because you did that last time, didn't you? On Tuesday, you had your notebook, but you were using your computer. But then you put the computer away. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's as far as I'm going to go with it. I don't want to. Anyways, Mr. Lebedinsky, it's how in different cultures and societies people interact with the sacred in different ways. That's what I would say religion is in a nutshell. Excuse me. This is a good word to know, hierophany. It comes from a religious studies scholar, a famous religious studies scholar called Mircea Eliade, who was from Romania. Mircea Eliade, a dude, a man. Oh, don't I know that, Ms. Kelsey? Yeah. I once had an interview in the religious studies department up at the University of Toronto. I was going to change from theology into religious studies because there's no money in theology. At least religious studies in their doctoral programs, they funded it so I could get some money to live on, just to live on, while I'm completing my degree full time. And I went for an interview and I thought I didn't know much about it. You know, it's kind of like, fake it till you make it, right, Mr. McMaster? I'll learn stuff as I go along. I mean, I knew religion, but only from the theological perspective. I mean, I knew about world religions and stuff like that, but I didn't know much about the theories of studying them. But I knew about Eliade, but I couldn't find anywhere where it said what his gender was. And Mircea, to me, looked like it could be. I'm not Romanian, so I don't know what Mircea is supposed to be. Is it a man's name? Is it a woman's name? Is it used for men or females or both? I don't know. And I couldn't find pictures of the dude. So I go into the interview and I thought, I'll do a little name dropping. So I drop Eliade, because I do like him as a scholar. I kind of do tend in his direction of religious studies. Nevertheless, I did a little name dropping with the professor who was interviewing me and made the mistake of saying she, and I could see immediately when I said that to her from her eyes. She didn't call me out on it, but I could tell that it just probably blown my chances, they might not have rejected my application, but I think they certainly would have made sure that I had a lot of, remedial work to do, to get up to snuff, because I didn't know that Eliade was a man and not a woman. At least he identified as a man. I should have said that, that's how I should have gotten out of it, should have said, man, anyways, but I wasn't smart. And I wasn't smart enough back then. Anyways, Romanian religious studies scholar who eventually emigrated to the United States and was teaching at the University of Chicago. Very famous, very influential, taught a lot of religious studies scholars who went off to teach at other schools. He died in 1986, and he wrote stuff about the sacred. And yeah, he came up with this word hierophany. I don't know if he invented it, but he certainly popularized it. For disclosures of the sacred. Hieros in Greek means sacred, sacred or holy, hieros. Phino means to make something appear, to show it, phino. We have these words in English, with Greek-based words like an epiphany. If you have an epiphany, it's like something is shown forth in your brain. You have how else do we use it? That's probably the most common way you'd encounter it. Do we come upon it in any other ways? Epiphany? Any others? No, nothing pops into my head. Not common. Well, anyways, so a showing forth or an appearance of the sacred is a hierophany. Hierophany. All right, so that's, that's when, well, whatever. Anyways, the sacred, it points to, remember, the sacred is it's a pointer. It's not ultimate reality itself. It's the appearance of the sacred is pointing to the ultimate reality underlying it that it's representing. Okay? And this is true even in cases when the sacred becomes actually present. So, for example, at the Catholic Mass I mentioned, Catholics believe that the bread and wine really transform into the body and blood of Jesus Christ. But it's still, if you ask the priest or ask Catholics, it's still bread and wine. It's going to taste like bread. It's going to taste like wine. The wine is not going to start tasting like human blood, and the bread will not taste like human flesh. Like if you ever bit the skin around your nails and stuff like that. Anyone do that? Bite your nails and stuff like that. That's not what's going to happen. So even though the belief is there that the sacred has actually become present and actually manifested itself, it's like a real hierophany, there's still that symbolic value where it's still pointing to something else. The bread is not really human flesh in that sense. It doesn't become real human flesh. It's still a pointer, but it's still a pointer to the ultimate reality, even in that case. The same thing you find like in a Hindu temple. People, I showed you the guy with Ganesh, right? The little elephant dude. I mean, they really, if you're a Hindu, the guy was a religious studies scholar. I don't think he believed any of this. But the Hindu priest who was with him, I imagine certainly did, they really believed they were waking up Ganesh. Every day at a Hindu temple, to whatever goddess it's dedicated to, the priests of the temple have to wake up the god from sleep, get it out of bed, feed it breakfast, clothe it, and then worship it. And then it's there for the rest of the day. And then when it gets to be nighttime, and the god is a little bbit sleepy, well, Miss Harrison, it's busy work being a god. People are constantly bothering you, coming in to make puja and vowing, and you don't have a lot of time to yourself. So later in the evening, the god is sleepy, so you put the god to bed. The god is animated. They really believe that. The statue, the idol, does become truly possessed of the presence of the actual God. Now, it's not the complete God. If you ask them, is the symbol? Yeah, they'll say, oh, yeah, it's a symbol. It's not really the God. But they do believe that God does really infest the statue when it's animated. It's the sacred is really there, but it's still a pointer to the God, to ultimate reality. It's still sign-oriented. So the sacred is a doorway to, or an entranceway to this ultimate reality, so you can experience it for a while. And maybe, hopefully you'll see where I'm starting to go with this, because our next lecture, not this week, but we could have it next week, Ms. Taylor, but I've lost her, haven't I? I've totally lost. By the way, what's going on with our soccer team? What's going on? Oh, you did? Oh, congratulations. Who scored? Oh, okay. Nobody I know. Not in my classes. She did a hat trick? Oh, good for her. What team were you playing? Oh, you thrashed somebody. Don't you want to know? Huh? Cedar Crest? Cedar Crest. Is that a Catholic school? Cedar Crest? I don't remember. Really? It's an all-girls school? Ooh, still? Wow, that's interesting. Not that there shouldn't be. I'm just saying, you want more money, you need to, get some guys and you ask me. Oh, wait a second. Wait, let's look at. Anyways. Oh, that's nice. Oh, good job. Good job. Did you play? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, good job. I'm keeping an eye on the soccer teams. I want to help out as best I can. We still have shuttle runs to do. Can do them up and down the aisle and keep you in shape. You can't. Oh, you can't. What happened? Oh, not my business. Sorry. So it's a doorway. It allows you to kind of step into ultimate reality a little bit. Okay, so where I'm going with this is we're going to get to encounter, because we talked about encountering sacred writings. I talked about writing, and I've been talking about the sacred, and then we get to encounter. Okay, the sacred is our doorway to encountering ultimate reality. And in this course, we're talking mainly about writings, books, usually books, but whatever, certain writings. And how do these sacred writings bring us into contact with ultimate reality that other writings don't, like the Bible? You know, how is the Bible, how does that bring me in contact with God, maybe than, you know, the poems of, what's her name? I'm almost there. No, that's not the woman I'm thinking of. She's from New England, from like the 1800s. She hasn't, I think her first name begins with an E. Is it Elizabeth? I can't remember. But anyways, you know what I'm saying. Poetry or music or something. How do you find that hierophany in these writings? Sometimes a direct hierophany. Maybe for a lot of Christians, they think they're reading the actual word of God that was dictated into the mind of some human being. Okay? Other Christians, not so much. But if you're a Muslim, you're dealing with a different hierophany in a way. God is more directly revealed in the Quran. And you know, I had you for world religions, right, Miss Cobb? Yeah, so you know this. Because if you're a Muslim, you believe that, yes, the Quran, the actual text of the Quran in classical Arabic from over 1,000 years ago, which no one speaks anymore, but the Quran is written in it. God literally wrote it himself, and on a stone in heaven, in his presence. And that's all Muhammad saw. Muhammad had visions of verses from this stone with the Quran written on it, and he would recite it, and eventually it was written down. But that's why it's the perfect book. It's the glorious Quran, and really glorious, because it's in the glory of Allah, of God himself. I mean, even Christians don't make that claim for the Bible and stuff like that. But some Jews do for their scriptures. At least in Hebrew, there are some Orthodox Jews or very, very religious Jews who would say that, yeah, the Torah that was given to Moses in Hebrew was created at the beginning of the world by God. And it was given to him. It was just given to him already. It wasn't written down later by the Jews. So these are true hierophanies. Oh, wait a second. One second. All right. So, and hence Revelations. We'll get to Revelation later. But I'll stop here. God bless you all. Good to see you all. Miss Taylor, the senior.
Yeah, you guys will probably
Good day, sir. Good day, sir. Did you get, Mr. Seraphin, did you get any notes? How are you going to take the quiz? Alrighty, you're going to take the quiz. Oh, Mr. Versa. You're welcome, Mr. Versa. Ms. Quesada. You're welcome, Ms. Quesada. Mr. Bastard, have a good day. And Mr. Levadinsky, you're still here. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you, Mr. Levadinsky.
I also have a few questions about
Yeah, go ahead.
the quiz.
Yeah.
Like what type